Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A new report from Manitoba's youth advocate states Indigenous boys who died by suicide or homicide were let down by the system, and the government needs to create more supports for youth. APTN's Michelle Karlinzig dives deeper into the report's findings.
Finding the Way Back is a report on an investigation by Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth, which looked at 45 boys in the province who died by suicide or homicide from 2009 to 2018. According to Ainsley Crone, acting Manitoba Advocate, the most glaring finding from the report is gaps between boys and girls.
Girls who are, struggling with substance use or mental health issues, they more often are allowed to stabilize in crisis facilities that are managed by the health system. And boys who are presenting with those very same behaviors are more often criminalized and expected to stabilize in the custody of the justice system.
Interviews were done with families, community leaders, and elders. 78% of the boys who died were First Nations. For their safety, the boys were not named. However, the report followed one boy identified as Adam, who died by suicide at 14. He was brought into CFS at an early age due to violence and substance abuse at home. The report said CFS had no records of support or intervention for Adam from age 7 until he died. To go with the report, a song from two men who were youth advocates. Lied To is their story of their experiences in the child welfare system. Under provincial legislation, the Manitoba Child Advocate makes recommendations and tracks the government's ability to listen to those suggestions. Crone says the government lacks strategy.
The government has been making some sporadic, one-off investments in various programs or initiatives, but what is missing right now is that those investments and those changes are not necessarily connected to that overarching vision of where the government is wanting to take this system.
The Manitoba Youth Advocate says their office will review the Manitoba government's strategy in response to their report next month. Michelle Karlinzig, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Further north, the Nunavut Impact Review Board is finishing the last public hearings about the Mary River Iron Ore Project in Nunavut's North Baffin region. Our Ken Driscoll went to the hearings today to find out one thing. If all the review board can do is make non-binding recommendations, what is the value of the process?
These public hearings about the proposed expansion of the Mary River mine near Pond Inlet, Nunavut, were supposed to happen in April, until a COVID outbreak in Iqaluit postponed them. Now they're happening, but the board's definition of public doesn't have much in common with reality. No members of the public are allowed in, and only 2 media at a time. If one reporter leaves, another is not allowed to take their place. I'm not allowed to move out of this position at the back of the room, and I'm not allowed to record audio, only images. The hearings are being shown online on Uvagut TV, but the review board refused permission to rebroadcast them. So, if you aren't free when the hearings are taking place, regular working hours, you're out of luck. The Mary River Iron Ore Mine wants to double size. These hearings are for public input. The thing is, no matter what the Nunavut Impact Review Board decide, it's just a recommendation. All this time, money, and secrecy for a decision that will eventually be made by the Northern Affairs Minister. James Ituluk is a longtime vice president with Nunavut Tungavik, the land claims organization that represents Nunavut. He still sees value in the hearings.
It is very important. Actually, it's part of the Canadian Constitution that the public hearing have to be held when there's going to be major development in the Nunavut.
Peter Ivalu is a member of the Iqaluit delegation. He's less optimistic than Ituluk.
There was a better way to do it, but it's a bit too late in the game now. Even if the board decides not to support it, that the ultimate decision falls on the federal minister. So it's a lose-lose situation for us, I think.
And what if the new Northern Affairs Minister doesn't follow the NIRB recommendations?
We talk a lot about reconciliation. It will the wonderful work that's been done in terms of reconciling with Indigenous people, well, it will be thrown out the window, the way I see it.
The hearings will continue Saturday, but don't show up if you're the public. This public meeting is invitation only. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
A new campaign was launched today in Winnipeg to improve educational outcomes for all students. Equity Matters is a coalition of over 75 organizations that want to see equity in education for students and school staff in Manitoba. The campaign calls for an education equity office in the city of Winnipeg and an education equity secretariat within the provincial government. Coalition believes improving educational outcomes for Indigenous and racialized students starts with seeing themselves better reflected in the curriculum and in all staff levels of the public school system. Currently, 3 school divisions in Winnipeg have passed a motion to endorse the Equity Matters campaign.
It's really about having better outcomes for our children. We've got a future of young people here. You're seeing graduation rates are lower than they've been in the past. They are increasing, but I think there's a real opportunity to create a village that's going to support our children.
There was a walk at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon today to protest against Indigenous identity fraud. More than 150 people showed up to the walk with Indigenous women leaders to protest the cases of identity fraud, saying it hurts everyone. A recent investigation found a university faculty member has no Indigenous ancestry after claiming to be Indigenous for the past 20 years. Professor of Social Work Raven Sinclair says universities and other institutions need to do better going forward.
There needs to be sort of a really intimate collaboration with Indigenous faculty members and elders and community members and so on. And we're here, we're available to do that work. And I mean, the worst thing would be for the university to implement policies and processes, in the absence of any Indigenous voices.
The national flag on the Peace Tower in Ottawa and on all Government of Canada buildings will be returning to full mast this Sunday. The flags were lowered to half-mast on May 30th, following the identification of unmarked graves at the former Kamloops residential school. In a statement, the federal government says the flags will be lowered again on November 8th for Indigenous Veterans Day and then raised again that evening. Flags will once again be lowered on November 11th for Remembrance Day, and then they'll return to full mast. The government says work will continue in partnership with survivors, families, and representative organizations to seek appropriate protocols to recognize future findings at former residential schools and to ensure their legacy remains at the forefront of Canadians' minds. Time for a quick break. Coming up, how one community is trying to reclaim its language. Stay with us. Welcome back. Less than 1 in 5 Algonquin can speak their language, but in a collaboration with a local university, the community of Kitsisakik in Quebec are investing in the revitalization of the Algonquin language. This is a story by Shushan Bakon, read by Lindsay Richardson.
A child's mother tongue is usually first learned at home, surrounded by family. But in the case of these Algonquin children in Kitsisakik, Quebec, it's happening on the bank of a river. Elder Louisa Papatsi says that growing up, she did not have the privilege of speaking her language.
Moi, j'ai été au pensionnat en 1959. Puis je suis sortie de là en 1968. Ça a été long, mais ça a été dur aussi en même temps de parler à la langue du Gouji, qu'on dit. Ça a été dur, mais on se tapait les doigts quand on ne comprenait pas. Et ils nous tapaient avec des règles.
Language learning is easiest at a young age, but structuring a complex language like Anishinaabe-Moan in order to transmit it through the school system to students like this elementary school in Kitsisakik requires additional help. That's where the University of Quebec in Abitibi-Témiscamingue comes in.
C'est vraiment une démarche qui vient de la communauté parce que c'est rendu un enjeu, c'est rendu urgent aujourd'hui de faire en sorte que la langue ait une place plus importante dans l'éducation des enfants de la communauté.
Nancy Wiskuti-Crépeau is an assistant professor at the university in nearby Val-d'Or. She says it took 2 years to finalize this language program and implement it at the Kitsisakik Elementary School. The program has 2 components: language learning for preschool students that will be done on the land, and for those in elementary school, learning will be done within the regular school program. Louisa Papazzi is playing a large role in getting it off the ground.
Et comme c'est là, il y a un nouvel programme qui s'en vient pour les professeurs. Nous, on va jouer comme des... c'est nous autres qui vont être professeurs en Algonquin. Au mois de novembre, là. Puis là, on se prépare. Moi, j'en ai préparé bien beaucoup de choses en Algonquin. Et surtout la base qu'on va commencer.
Kitsisakik wants to implement Anishinaabe-Moan in its school curriculum during an interesting time in Quebec. The province is currently fighting for the safeguarding of the French language in its institutions, including education.
Comment on peut favoriser justement des allers-retours entre les 2 langues, mais dans l'enseignement des disciplines scolaires qui sont faits aussi par les enseignants allochtones et qui viennent ici dans la communauté.
Finding the right balance between Indigenous and colonial language teaching may take some work, but there's no denying the fact that there's a beautiful irony in seeing Louisa Papetzi, a residential school survivor, teaching the language Canada once tried to eradicate from her life. A story by Shashan Bacon, APTN National News, Kitsisakik, Quebec.
To Ontario now, where an annual government initiative to increase the understanding of treaties is underway. APTN's Elena McDougall has more about Treaties Recognition Week, which included a famous Toronto landmark getting a makeover.
The CN Tower was lit in the 4 colors of the medicine wheel Tuesday as part of Treaties Recognition Week. Started in 2016, it aims to increase understanding of treaty rights and obligations through school programming, and in the time of COVID, virtual events and resources can be found online, such as a free resource for elementary students produced by the Anishinaabe Nation. Ajay Nwending, How We Are Related, guides students through lessons about Turtle Island, the Anishinaabe worldview, wampum, and treaties. It features animated versions of characters created by Kelly Crawford, author of Alex Shares His Wampum Belt and Dakota Talks About Treaties.
They're children's books, so Alex is specific to him building the Lego belt, and Dakota's is kind of her treaty journey. And now, last year we started and then have launched the elementary online, and now we've announced that the secondary is being developed and will be released in the spring.
Indigenous-owned bookstores such as goodminds.com in Southern Ontario also provide resources to learn more about treaties. Dr. David Anderson is hopeful that increased understanding about treaty obligations can heal the land and waters of Turtle Island.
What's it going to be 100 years from now? And what can we do to make sure our grandchildren's grandchildren dip their cup in Lake Ontario and drink that water? That would be so cool if we had that vision and we work together to make sure our grandchildren's grandchildren can dip their cup in Lake Ontario and drink that water. That's what this is about. Let's understand what the treaties and our ancestors agreed to. Let's build this country together.
You can access links to treaty education resources at anishinaabe.ca and find books at goodminds.com. Elena McDougall, APTN National News, Hamilton.
Some good reads there indeed. A new report on connectivity shows a growing urban and rural divide when it comes to accessing broadband in the north. Telecommunication entrepreneurs and researchers say government efforts are missing the mark when it comes to closing that gap. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs brings us that story.
It's going to take more than faster internet to improve the current state of telecommunications north of 60. The recent report, Waiting to Connect, examines connectivity and disparity in internet access between urban, rural, and remote communities. Authored by nonprofit Council of Canadian Academics, findings show Canada has failed at meeting targets for equitable access to reliable, high-speed, and affordable internet. Lyle Fabian, president of Catlotech Communications in Yellowknife, says he wasn't surprised by the findings.
These smaller players, are going up against, a large conglomerate like Northwest Tel, and the level playing field is just non-existent because the majority of the infrastructure, which is paid for by, public dollars and paid for and funded by the CRTC, and yet we still see no benefit in it.
And then there's the issue of unreliable internet.
We had, 3 severe network outages in the Northwest Territories. The second last one, Yellowknife was out, for a good 8 hours. The RCMP was down, the military was down, the GWT and the federal government of Canada was down. And again, all because of, we put all our eggs in one basket. And when that infrastructure, gets cut or gets damaged, we all pay the price for lack of connectivity.
A big takeaway from the report, the need to address how governments spend their money.
And we didn't understand how some of the current funding structures don't address those pieces. They address maintenance of equipment, the installation of equipment, getting the fiber in the ground, but they don't necessarily talk to small communities and say, okay, what is the extra support you need to make sure that everybody has the connection?
For Fabian, investing in Indigenous-owned community broadband will lead to social and economic development.
And that is to facilitate, numerous opportunities for Indigenous communities, which is, again, you can utilize broadband innovation for language and culture preservation, through the storage of, their digital storage and media of their language and culture, teaching demonstrations of their culture, language history and traditional practices, and then sharing this information, either locally or, throughout the world.
Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Indigenous TikTok creators are getting some help with a new program. We've got details coming up after the break. Welcome back. Time now to take a look at our photo of the day. Denise McQuaig was more than happy to send us this lovely photo of Shotzi, or Shootsy, a furry friend indeed that if you have a photo of your furry friend that shares space with you, be sure to send your photos to share@aptn.ca and tell us about the little friends in your life. Your pooch or kitty cat might be our next photo of the day. Let's have a look at your Saturday weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, sunny and 9 for Halifax, snow and 5 for St. John's. -6 with snow for Kuujjuaq and Inukjuak. 10 in Montreal, cloudy and 6 in Chibougamau. 10 with showers in Sault Ste. Marie, sunny and 10 in North Bay. 13 with rain for Thunder Bay, 11 and showers in Sioux Lookout. +4 and cloudy for God's Lake and Norway House. Sunny and 13 for Winnipeg and Dauphin, 14 in Brandon. 12 under sunny skies for Regina, 10 with the sun out in Saskatoon. -3 with flurries in Uranium City, 5 and showers in La Ronge. 0 with snow in Fort Chip, +3 and snow in Fort McMurray. 8 in Edmonton, 9 in Lethbridge. 10 with showers for Vancouver, 11 and rain in Victoria. +1 with snow in Prince George and Smithers. Minus 15 with flurries in Old Crow, 0 and snow in Whitehorse. 3 below for Yellowknife, minus 10 with snow in Norman Wells. 12 below in Sachs Harbor, snow and minus 9 in Paulatuck. Plus 1 with snow for Chesterfield, Whale Cove, and Baker Lake. Minus 13 in Resolute, 6 below with snow in Joe Haven. A new training program aimed at helping Indigenous TikTokers up their TikTok game is starting next week. Sarah Connor spoke with the only Yukon TikToker selected for the program. And as she tells us, there's a lot to learn from Indigenous TikTok. Here's that story.
One of my favorite berries is cranberries. You know,
Jocelyn Joe Strack has only been using TikTok for 3 months.
It's time to say goodbye to the swans.
But thanks to her videos sharing her Yukon First Nations knowledge, she already has 17,000 followers.
There is this amazing community of Indigenous creators on TikTok that are sharing knowledge, they're sharing about rights, about trauma, about reconciliation, and it's incredible.
They're one of our most sacred animals.
Joe Strack is the only Yukoner selected for the National Screen Institute's first TikTok Accelerator program for Indigenous creators.
Home, a place where I can go.
The online program will help 30 Indigenous creators up their game in the TikTok world by providing pointers in lighting, networking, and most importantly, how to tell a good story on TikTok.
And then I saw this program come around and I was like, wow, I could really learn a lot and connect with all of these other creators as well. I have this other little app that I use. It takes time.
Joe Strack will use the training program to share stories on TikTok and her role as Yukon University's research chair in Indigenous knowledge. She plans to create content based on her own TikToks, which are centered about the teachings of the earth.
We've always shared the creek with the bears.
So my role as the Indigenous Knowledge Chair at Yukon University is much about trying to bridge knowledge systems. Now there's this opportunity to have little 1-minute clip sharings of it too through TikTok to the broader audience.
So this is the people side and this is the bear side.
The training program starts next week. Joe Strack says she's excited to use the platform as a way to share with even more Indigenous people.
This is just another platform where I think Indigenous people are really just the red wave is flowing, man, and it's really exciting to be a part of it. We get to start sharing with people like APTN.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
So, woo! We'll see you next.
I could sure use some training for TikTok as well. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.